Hi, everyone. As promised last week, this is a quick introduction to Zotero. I'm currently using Firefox. This does work with other browsers too. It works, I guess, fine with Chrome. It works with Safari on a Mac, but it works best for me on a PC with Firefox. So I definitely download and install Firefox. Even if you don't like it, it's great for this application of Zotero. You want to direct your browser to zotero.org. This is where you're going to download the actual sort of desktop client. So you can see here, you want to download the desktop client. I'll show you that in a second. Once you do that, you also want to make sure you do this connector here. That's going to allow you to import things from the browser. You'll kind of make more sense in a second. And then you're going to want to use one of these plugins here because you want to let Zotero communicate with Word, because it can take all of your citations out of your Zotero library and put those into a Word document. You may not use Word if you're a Mac person. You might just use the pages that came with your Mac. I know a lot of people now use Google Docs, things like that. That's fine, but we really do want you to hand in your thesis or capstone as a Word document, definitely a thesis. When you're working with other people, especially older people like me, we tend to be kind of more Word dependent. So you can definitely get Word for free as long as you're a student at BU. I will put a link on Blackboard so you can see that. So if you don't have Word now, but don't want to pay for it, just download it, use it while you're here at BU. It's going to make your life a lot easier and a lot easier for your professors too. Okay, so you definitely want to go to Zotero. Again, download this, download the desktop client, the connector, and the plugins. So once this is properly installed, you'll see now when I go to a place like a PubMed, I'm going to go back to PubMed, using that same search we had on Thursday about the malocclusion and the two different types of fixed braces or Invisalign. So now that Zotero is installed in my version of Firefox, I get a new icon up here. I get this little manila folder. So with that little manila folder being present in Firefox, that lets me know that Zotero has been installed and it's now communicating with Firefox. So if I wanted to save any of these results here on this page in PubMed, and right now my computer is displaying, I think, 20 per page or 10 per page, which normally it's 20, but that's fine. If I click on this little manila folder, that lets me know, and it's on the wrong screen, let's drag this over here. I get this little dialog box, and that is Zotero is saying, I noticed there were 10 things on this page. Would you like me to grab all 10? So if I wanted to, I could say here, select all, and then say okay, but I tend not to do that. I don't want to save all, whatever, 165 of these. I just want to include the ones that actually make sense. And I know that maybe like number 3 here, for example, is pretty good. So I'm just going to click on this one here. I normally like to look at the title and abstract and only save the papers I think I'm probably going to use. So this paper looks fine. You notice that little icon now in the upper right-hand corner has changed. So a minute ago, it was actually a manila folder, meaning there are multiple items on this page I can capture. If I click now, it's going to be just one sheet of paper, meaning this is a journal article I can capture. Do you want me to do that? I know you can't see it. I'm going to drag this over. This is actually my Zotero library. This will live both on your computer and up in the cloud. So the great thing about Zotero is that wherever you happen to be, you're at like a friend's house, you go back to your parents' house for summer vacation, your job, wherever you are, you can always just log into the cloud and pull down these citations and work on Zotero wherever you happen to be. So I'm just going to make a new folder just so I can put those into a certain place. I'm just going to click on this little folder icon here. And just so this shows up at the top, I'm just going to call this 000 B1 test, just so I can just see it at the top of the page there. So whatever folder you highlight, that's where your citations are going to go by default. So I'm just going to drag this off here for a second so I can go back to PubMed. And then when I do this, if I click on this in PubMed, now I'll drag this back over. It automatically saved that citation right into my B1 test library. That's one I had highlighted. You can see it brings in everything you need to cite the paper. So it brought in the title, the journal title, the author names, the abstract, the keywords, which in this case be mesh terms. So it does a great job of pulling in all the things you need to cite a paper. So similarly, I can keep doing this for other kinds of resources. So I'll just keep dragging this out of the way for the time being. So say I went to, actually I'll do it maybe side by side so you can see it better. So I can do that here. So I'll drag this off to the side here, drag my Zotero library over. That should work. Okay. So if I go someplace like, so this is great for journal articles and any of the databases we talked about so far. So PubMed, Embase, Web of Science, anything you use, there's going to be a way to get citations from that into Zotero. But Zotero is really versatile depending on whatever type of resource you're using. Say you're going to use a book. The BU library catalog, you can definitely export things from that into Zotero. The BU library has about 1 million books total. There are about 50 million books in existence, so I tend to use Amazon as my kind of book catalog to get books in there. Whenever I'm doing this search, I can never think of an example of a book, so I just default to Harry Potter. So I was going to type in Harry Potter here. So the nice thing about this too is that Zotero can recognize all kinds of different materials. So this is obviously one of the Harry Potter movies. So if I clicked on this, that little icon is going to change eventually to represent, this might be a streaming movie, I guess. I make it just kind of this weird, that's usually, if Zotero is confused, you get that kind of little sort of just gray sheet of paper, basically. But if I went to like one of the Harry Potter DVDs, if they still even make DVDs, or in this case, I'll look at the books themselves. The icon's now going to change to a little book. So it knows exactly what type of item you're sort of, citing. So a book is different than a journal article because books have, editions and volumes and translations, that kind of stuff. Whereas journals have volumes and, it's the different information you capture. Usual multiple authors for a journal article, maybe only one for a book. Like textbooks have editors and authors, it captures all that too, so it's really good. So it knows what type of resources this is a book. And now if I click on that little book, you'll see now Harry Potter pop up here in a second. If it does it, bingo. So there it is right now. And again, all the things I would need to cite Harry Potter. In this case, also the illustrator for the American version, Mary Grandpré. So it's great that all the things you would need to cite a book is going to be there. Similarly, you're going to reference, not that many books, probably just textbooks. You could do it from BU, but it's easier to do it through Amazon. You might also want to cite websites. It's great at websites. So whatever website you want to use, say you want to use, like, say, the CDC. Maybe you're talking about COVID and dental health or something. You'll see that in many cases that it recognizes this as a website. So this now kind of bluish piece of paper up here, that means it recognizes this as a website. And if I click on that, it's going to save this as a website, but it's also going to do, it's going to grab the things you definitely need to cite a website. So as you know, when you've built a website before, like you can make all those headlines like the H1, H2, and the HTML and the coding. So it'll try to find the headline for this page and pull that right here into Zotero. So I guess in this case, CDC works 24/7 is just the name of this landing page, I guess. It also tries to do the day that you actually access that page and the URL. Even if you have nothing else, in many cases, like we talked about before with like the with the example of Medline Plus, about those, sometimes you find a web page that you really don't know who made it. It always will tell you the date that you access that page and the URL. That's the minimum you need to cite something, so it's always going to do that for you, which is great. And when there's more information, it'll find that too. So it works really, really well with websites. Some websites, it gets a little bit confused. Like say I went to the New York Times because I wanted like to get a newspaper article. Again, maybe I'm talking, I can't type or spell. Maybe I want to get something about, say, COVID-19, and I really can't type today. COVID-19 and dentistry or something. So, whatever I wanted to as an article that way. So if I'm looking at just the home page of the New York Times, because there are ads on this page, there should be an ad popping up here in a second. Zotero, again, gets a little bit confused. It really doesn't know how to deal with a page like with banner ads. But if I pick any one story, and unfortunately, of course, the whole crisis in Ukraine is still going right now. Say I pick one of these terribly sad stories about Ukraine. It will, after a couple of seconds, realize that this is now just a newspaper article. And I get a little newspaper up here, so it knows like the byline, the date. So it can even tell this is a newspaper article and grab all the things I need to cite that, which is great. So again, these work really, really well, but it only recognizes about 50,000 websites as websites or newspapers or whatever the case may be. You can still cite things that it doesn't recognize. So if I go to our homepage, the BU Medical Library homepage, it unfortunately does not recognize this as a web page. It really, we don't have enough hits to generate automatic identification from Zotero. But if I click on this kind of blank page here, it will at least grab what's there. So you see it pulled in again, that kind of bare minimum. So it knows at least it's the web page. It's going to go through here and pull back as much information as it can. So I could still cite this, and I can always edit this manually. So if I went through and maybe poked around and discovered like me or Elena Etienne, our kind of webmaster, if I wanted to add that person's name to this, I certainly could. Or I could even say I would guess on the author, that statement of responsibility. We know that BU is claiming responsibility for this page. So I can make the author, Boston University or Boston University Medical Campus. So you have a lot of freedom here that if you want to make this a better record, you certainly can do that. Okay, so that's like really quick overview. So going through, so we're primarily going to be using journal articles, of course. So when you're on your website, a database like PubMed, you can easily save things. You can go to a place like Amazon to save books. You can pretty much save any website you want, very easy to do. If you had something totally unique, sometimes we have students that maybe you're working in somebody's lab and your PI gives you like a data set or an unpublished manuscript, or you interview somebody, or even your PI gives you like just a sort of personal communication like an email or something. You can always add things like that that don't have a web page you downloaded it from. If you just click on this little green and white little plus sign here, now you can just make something manually, and you can just say whatever this thing happens to be. So we'll just say interview. So you interviewed your PI, and now I can make a blank interview record here, and then fill in all the things. So interview with my PI, the title, the date, all that stuff. So regardless of what you're trying to cite, you can always make a way to cite that in Zotero, which is great. Okay, so it's obviously pretty simple to grab things from websites or whatever the place happens to be, pull this into Zotero in order to cite that. So when you get everything in here, which it's probably not going to take you very long to get this populated, you of course want to now use this in some kind of meaningful way. So when you're writing your capstone or writing your thesis, or a few years from now writing a grant application or whatever, you of course want to use Zotero to cite your document. So I'm just going to open up Word, and you can see I'll just stick it over here again. I'll kind of take the place of my document here. So I can just kind of scooch this over to the side. Perfect. Okay, and I'll bring up Zotero back up. Perfect. Okay, so here I am in Word. Again, this is for PC. I think it's maybe Word 2018 or 2020, a fairly recent version of Word, probably the same one you could download from BU for free, because I downloaded this from BU as faculty. And you'll see that looking at my toolbar, I do have a Zotero toolbar right here. So I'm just going to start writing a paper. So whatever, something to cite. So whatever, blah, blah, bunch of stuff. And say I want to cite this sentence. So I want to use Zotero to do it. I don't want to do it manually. So you see, I have this button here that says Add Edit Citation. I'm going to click on this, and it asks me, what citation style do I want to use? As Dr. Davies and I keep saying, that BU does not specify a style. So there is no specific GMS style. There's no BU grad student style. I don't know why, frankly, but there isn't. A lot of students like APA. That's one that's like the parenthesis author name, comma, date, parenthesis, which is pretty popular, easy to read. So we'll just go with that. So I'm going to choose APA 7 there as my style. Now I get this little pop-up window. So what thing do I want to cite? So I'm going to hit this little drop down here, and I'm going to say my classic view. And that gives me, they'll presumably this will be under the screen, my actual Zotero library. And now I can see that folder I have highlighted. So say I want to cite that paper we have about sort of Invisalign versus braces for malocclusion. So I want to cite that paper. I'm just going to click on OK. And now I get a perfect APA citation for that paper right here in text, which is great. I have a new sentence here, whatever I want to do. Say I want to cite this sentence here. And maybe I have multiple items for that citation. One of the great things about Zotero is that you can jump to different folders. Most citation software packages, like say EndNote, you have to have everything you want to cite just in one library. So if you had like 50 citations in one place and 50 in another, you'd have to make like a new library combining those 100 together to get them all in one place. Zotero, you can just jump from place to place. So say I want to cite, again, well, you said the CDC in this case. So I'm going to say Add Edit Citation. Same thing again, I'm going to say Classic View. And say I want to cite multiple things. I'm going to click here, it says multiple sources. And I'm going to say in this case, I want to cite the CDC. I'm just going to move that over to this box on the right-hand side so it knows that's one of the things I want to cite. I'm going to jump to a different folder, a different Alyssa, not our malocclusion Alyssa here, and say I want to use whatever this paper is here. Same thing, I can move that to that little box. And when I do that, you can even see that you can also keep things sorted. So maybe in this sentence, this interferon paper actually should come before that CDC website. So I can move these up and down to reflect what order those should actually go into the citation. Now I can just click on OK. When I'm done writing this paper, if I want to put my bibliography in there, I'd probably do a page break and write like, bibliography or works cited or something at the top. But I can just click here and say add edit bibliography. There is a perfectly formatted APA bibliography right there. Now it's also great, like say as you're writing and, maybe again, like a thesis or a capstone, you're going to get feedback from faculty, your readers, your advisors. So maybe your advisor goes like, that first sentence is kind of dumb. It doesn't say anything. It's a bunch of random typos. So you're like, yeah, you're right. I don't know, tired or something. I don't know what I was doing. So I want to get rid of that sentence. I'm just going to go through and delete that sentence. So now, of course, bibliography is going to change because that first citation now is gone. I can just click here on refresh and it's going to reflect that now. So that citation is gone. The bibliography is now just two things. And maybe the nicest thing about Zotero or any of these kind of citation management options is that if you go through and so you write this document, so you write it for APA or whatever style you choose, and then your PI is like, it's not really the style I like, or, it's such a good paper, do you actually want to publish it in a journal? And that probably happens about 15% of the time with our students. Now they do such a good job, they actually get their thesis published as a journal article. And maybe that journal doesn't use APA style. So you don't have to retype anything. So say I submit this to JAMA, which obviously uses JAMA style. I can just change this where it says document preferences here. I can now choose a different style. So there's JAMA style right there and say, okay. And now it's automatically reformatted on the fly as JAMA style. So now it's the superscript number style instead of that parenthesis author name. And now it rechanges the citations too. So you don't have to retype anything. So it is really a great tool to use Zotero. Again, probably not in this case, but you can also, if you want to, you can make group libraries. So if you're working with other people, these are my group libraries down here. You can actually invite people. So this is my friend Botros, his nickname in high school was Bobo. So you can actually make, like, this is a Bobo file I made with him. So he's an engineer with 2 master's degrees. Whatever project, I totally forget, to be honest, but I was able to load a bunch of documents into this file for him, and he could look at them on his own, side of the fence. He could send me, like this for his second master's degree, I think. He would send me like papers he was working on, and I could make changes and send it back through here. So it's a nice way to share citations with people. It's great if you ever build like a journal club. It's a great way to put PDFs in there for you and your coworkers to share. So it's kind of a great feature of Zotero too. Okay, so that's everything I wanted to talk about Zotero. Hopefully this is pretty quick. So like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, but it is pretty intuitive, I think. And then again, if you have any questions, different questions, or run into any problems installing or anything like that, you can either ask me or stop by the library, and Jason or Victor can help you, with your computer, download whatever you need to do or to get this up and running.